Welcome, everybody. I would like to introduce Charlotte Sweetman. Charlotte is the Marketing Business Development Manager for Maxim Healthcare, and Charlotte is going to tell us about the services that they provide to our pediatric population around the country. Charlotte, thanks so much for joining us and for your support of case management.
Thank you so much, Mary, Jenny, and Maureen. I'm really looking forward to being here today and hearing from the speakers. I am going to speak a little bit about our services. Again, my name is Charlotte Sweetman with Maxim Healthcare. I am a business development manager with Maxim. You can advance. You can advance again. Okay, so for those not familiar with Maxim Healthcare, we have been in this home healthcare realm for over 35 years. We do provide care to adult, geriatric, and pediatric patients, but we find that a lot of the care that we see that is needed in the home is primarily pediatric patients, especially recently. And I am going to talk a little bit about, the specific care that we are providing. If you want to advance. Okay, so we do cover we have 150 offices across the United States. We are in 44 out of the 50 states. So if you look here, the blue and the red are states that we can provide care in. I feel like this is really important to mention because we do have families that will, decide to relocate to a different state. And most of the time we have an office where they're going to be relocating that can resume their care. So we find that a lot of families will choose to use us because they know that if in the future, for any reason, they were to move, there will be a smooth transition of care. Can advance. Okay, and then specifically looking at New England, because that's where most of us, I'm assuming, are here today. We have 5 offices in Massachusetts. I'm out of our Boston office. We have a location in Rhode Island, in New Hampshire, and Maine. And then looking at our 2025 snapshot, we did provide care to 312 medically complex pediatric patients last year. And I know and can predict that we are going to provide probably even more than that this year in 2026 for our pediatric patients. So, and then we do have over 1,500 caregivers. That number is from last year. I know that we're already surpassed that this year. So a lot of nurses in the area to provide, really great care for these pediatric patients. Can advance. I'm sure we're all familiar with private duty nursing, so I won't dig into this too much, but it's also known as continuous skilled nursing or block shift nursing. It's really a comprehensive hourly nursing in the home so that our patients that we are working with can stay home with their families. If we go to the next slide, we'll kind of list out a couple different diagnoses we see. So we work with cerebral palsy patients, failure to thrive, muscular dystrophy. A lot of the kiddos that we are providing care for are living with needs. They may have a tracheostomy or they have to be on a home ventilator. Maybe it's enteral feeds and they have to be on these needs when they go home. So then we have nurses in the home to provide that care. We did include a blog on one of our 12-year-old patients, Ava, and just how private duty nursing has improved the quality of life for her and her family and has been able to keep her at home with her family and her loved ones. I believe Maureen will be sending out this link afterwards. If not, you can absolutely feel free to reach out to me via email and I'd be happy to share the blog with you. Can advance. So insurances and coverage, I'll very quickly just say we are Medicaid certified. So a lot of the families we work with, I'll talk about through Massachusetts, usually are getting their private duty nursing authorizations through Mass Health. We are contracted with hundreds of commercial insurances. It just depends if they have the benefit or not to provide this care. And then lastly, we do also work with military and federal benefits for our active duty service members, their dependents, or even veterans and their dependents too. So you can advance. And then just a couple military insurances we see that provide private duty nursing. So under TRICARE for our active duty service members, their children can get private duty nursing either through a program called ECHO or home health benefit. And then also CHAMP VA is for our 100% service connected veterans dependents. They can get block shift nursing through CHAMP VA as well, and we accept all of those insurances. And the next slide talks a little bit about CHAMP VA. I'm not going to go too much into detail on this. I would say the biggest takeaway is just if a family has any military affiliation, you can reach out to us and we're happy to look into benefits for them. You can advance. Then lastly, just school health services. A lot of the kiddos that we start providing care for eventually are gonna go to school. So we can provide one-to-one nursing in the school. We are contracted with so many school districts across the state and the other states as well. So typically they don't have to take out of their Medicaid or whatever other insurance is paying for the nursing in the home. We can get the services through the school. And that way they're able to go to school. And that is it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to hear from our speakers today and to be here today.
Great. Thanks so much, Charlotte. And again, we really appreciate Maxim's support. You guys are wonderful. So now I would like to hand it over to Bonnie Boomsma, another of our pediatric SIG committee members, to introduce our speakers.
I don't think Bonnie is on.
Sorry, we had some technical issues.
Jenny, do you think oh, there she is.
Good afternoon. So happy to have everyone here, and I'm so excited about the speakers that we have for you today. We have a great pair here to provide really important information that will really help in our work with our pediatric patients. So we have Dr. Chrissy Sally here, who's a pediatric psychologist and director of the Clinical Education and Engagement program at the Courageous Parent Network, which is a national nonprofit organization founded to orient, equip, and empower families and others for caring for a child with a serious medical condition. In her role at CPN, she provides education opportunities for clinicians that center the family perspective and promote palliative awareness practices. We're really happy to have her. And with her today is Laura Will, who's the story curator for the Courageous Parent Network. She holds a master's degree in nursing from Columbia University and has a clinical background in geriatric palliative care. Her professional path evolved following her experience as a parent of a medically complex child, her 6-year-old son, Alden. And she relies on the comprehensive network of medical professionals, medications, and specialized equipment to support his health. Drawing from both her clinical expertise and lived experience, Laura's work helps families and clinicians to find connection, information, and meaning through the Courageous Parent Network online resources as they navigate pediatric medical hardship. So welcome to both of you. We're so happy you're here and looking forward to what you have to say.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate the invitation to present today on a topic that I think Laura and I both care about so deeply, coming in from different perspectives as a provider and as a parent, although Laura herself is a provider too. We are going to share some thoughts with you today through a slide deck, and then with the remaining time, we will also point out some resources at Courageous Parents Network website that can support the parents that you work with and yourselves in your role as supporters to them. Let's see, you've seen the learning objectives already. So we're going to begin by centering the conversation with a core truth. And if any of you are parents, you will know this to be true, which is that all parents have a desire to be a good parent to their children. We will do a deeper dive into this idea of being a good parent. But for the beginning, I'll just say there's a notion within all of us that we hold of what it means to us to be a good parent. When do I feel like I'm really being a good mom? When do I feel like I'm crushing it? When do I give myself less grace and have a harder time and say, oh, I missed a step there. But there's an internal, very personal meaning that we give to this concept that we all aim to live out as we care for our children. And that is of course, also true for parents and caregivers who are caring for children with medical complexity. Not only is the notion true at the surface level, something that we can accept, it is well supported by research. And in fact, the term good parent came from parents themselves in research. This is research that was started about probably over 2 decades ago now by a nurse researcher named Dr. Pamela Hines, who began her work in the pediatric cancer space. And she went out, and as part of her research, she interviewed parents about their role as parents and caregivers to these children during their cancer journey. And this phrase, or the desire to be a good parent, is one of the themes that bubbled to the top in the qualitative research that she was conducting. And again, the idea of being a good parent really came from the mouths of the parents themselves. So it's not a label or a term that the researchers imposed on the research. It was really something that the parents used in terms of a label, but also acknowledgement and a desire that they have. The early definitions in the research of what the parents felt made them a good parent were things like doing right by my child, being there for my child, conveying love to my child, advocating for my child, letting the divine lead, and not allowing suffering. And it's important to note that while we have this term good parent, and now we're developing an understanding of what is meant by that, there is no such thing as a bad parent. So this isn't meant to be opposed to anything. The notion is that all parents want to be a good parent. There is no such thing as a bad parent. Over time, the research itself evolved. So in the early research, researchers got a sense of what it meant to parents to be a good parent, what it looked like to them, how they kind of defined that term for themselves. They went back again and asked parents, what does that definition look like, to a new group of parents? But then importantly, they added to the research. And the second question in the body of work was, describe the actions from others that would help you in your effort to be a good parent to your child now. And I'll also add here that the evolution of the research wasn't just asking the second important question, but also stepping out of the pediatric cancer realm and into other domains and other families caring with children with different types of medical complexities. And the second question is the one that I think is really important for us as a group here today to be thinking about. And it's something that I love to speak about because it as much as being a good parent is unique in terms of its definition to parents, I think that we each have to think creatively in our roles and our relation to these parents as to what we can do to foster the notion of being a good parent for them. So this is a body of work that Courageous Parents Network actually was involved in. We collaborated with the researchers on this topic. Again, this was a newer group of parents who were again asked how they define being a good parent. And this was a group of parents that were not just restricted to pediatric cancer. And there were 10 major themes that arose for them. They said that they felt like a good parent when they could be an advocate to their child, by conveying love, providing the best possible care, comforting their child, creating meaningful memories with their child, helping their child reach their fullest potential, seeking some balance amongst their many roles, developing their own medical insights, respecting their child as a whole person, and also weighing their child's quality of life when it comes to decision making. There is nobody who talks about being a good parent better, though, than Dr. Hines, whose work originated this. And so I'm going to play a short video for you now so you can hear how she describes the work.
Parents whose child is very, very ill have taught me that they have an internal definition of what it means to be a good parent. And I'd like to share a few of them with you. being able to make unselfish and informed decisions on behalf of my child, being able to advocate for my child with a staff, even if it means that these people I trust will get mad at me, remaining at my child's bedside, no matter how difficult, helping my child to know that he or she will not be alone when they die, and most importantly, helping my child to be certain that I, as a parent, have loved him or her well. And what we know from our research is that even first-time parents who give birth to a child who is fatally ill already have an internal definition of what it means to be a good parent to this very ill infant. And if we but ask, give the invitation for this human connection, their answer will help us and guide us in giving care to this very ill infant and the family.
You could watch that video over and over again. I just love how she presents the concept, and how she thinks about using this notion to enhance our work in relation to parents. So something that I've been asked in prior presentations and luckily has been studied, so we have a sense of an answer from research, although you would hear this, I believe, from parents themselves anecdotally, and I'll have Laura speak to that in just a moment. The definition of being a good parent does evolve with time, which makes a lot of sense because parents get a lot more expertise over time. There's a lot in their role as a parent and caregiver that evolves over time. But at the beginning, it can also often begin with perfectionistic ideals and things along the lines of a cure or getting things exactly right or doing all the therapies just as they've been recommended, that sort of thing. But over time, as it evolves, things like having really quality experiences with their child or their child having the opportunity for those quality experiences, making really great memories as a family, and indulging in things like play and laughter and love and comfort are what really matters and helps them feel like a good parent over time. Laura, I invite you to share now your perspective.
Yeah, I think the beginning of this arrow for me was like this time of hypervigilance and a lot of kind of fear-based parenting. And as I moved throughout the arc, kind of started to look at Alden and be like, oh, what is he telling me? What's he really looking for? But one of the first times I really realized the shift was towards kind of acceptance and seeing Alden as Alden was probably a simple thing, as simple as moving from every 3-month follow-up appointments with our neurologist to spacing them out to 6 months, right? And I can't remember if I asked for that or the neurologist suggested it, but I can say that kind of the clinician giving permission was so valuable. And I think about, with summer coming up, having his physical therapist suggest a therapy break and say, it's okay for a kid just to be a kid. And I love when a clinician with any background kind of says, what are his goals for the summer? What's bringing you joy this summer? And kind of starting with that and then filling in the medicine around it.
Laura, do you think you could have been as open to a suggestion for a PT break several years ago?
No. No, it all comes with time for sure. And the goals for Alden do change, right? Like when kids are little, they're just say, before 3, it's just for us, we weren't in a place where he was medically unstable, so we were able to really work hard at PT. But even the goals that we present within the PT session, have shifted from, we want him to walk to, what is this small skill that's going to give Alden's more independence in this moment, right? So even the way that we approach that goal setting, which happens, every 6 months, has shifted in a more Alden-centric way.
Thank you. Here is some other summaries that came from the research, both in the idea of what might be a benefit to the parent as they strive to be a good parent, as well as some challenges of striving to be a good parent. So Laura, if you want to talk about some of these, that would be great.
Happy to talk through the challenges. So, I mean, I just think the time demands, right, of meeting I have 3 kids, of meeting any kid's needs is significant. But then when you layer in the medical needs, one of the things that kind of pulls me out of a state of feeling like a good parent is the concern that I'm not meeting my other children's needs. I've loved having child life involved. In Massachusetts, we have community-based palliative care with child life wrapped around, and that's been an extraordinary comfort. Looking through these next 2 challenges, it's the opinions and perspectives of others that can feel destabilizing. Those can range from my well-intentioned mother trying to feed a fully dependent G-tube child a specific holiday traditional meal, to my mother-in-law turning to me and asking, are you going to toilet train him? And I'm like looking at my quadriplegic son, who I'm just like playing whack-a-mole with medical issues, and like scratching my head, like toilet training, I couldn't sleep the night after that. And it was interesting to kind of reflect on, oh man, she opened up this hope for me that I hadn't even allowed myself to hope for. But what's interesting about the toilet training one is then a clinician mentioned the same concept to me probably 6 months later, and also wrapped around the support of, we can ensure that you have the right setup, right? There's actually a hygiene chair that's going to support his body as he sits on the toilet. It kind of paints a picture that's possible. And all of a sudden, we were excited about that idea. That was a beautiful thing. He sat on the potty when he was 5 for the first time, and he pooped. So that's great. There is the ongoing concern of suffering. It's really high stakes parenting. I think a lot of the decisions that we make as parents feel high stakes. And then for medically complex parents, they can really be life or death, or you're choosing between medical interventions, both of which will involve suffering. And so when you have, multiple clinicians giving you different options for how to manage that, you are weighing your child's suffering against your child's suffering. And it can be a really challenging space to feel like you are making a right decision. And then the last one, structural challenges. These are coming up, I think, more and more. I'm hearing from peers of less DDS funding, PCA hours, losing that. And, I can't solve these systemic issues. I don't think any of us can here today. But one thing that's been incredibly helpful for me to hear from our complex care nurse practitioner or case manager was just like, I'm not going anywhere, right? Like, you've got me. It's just really an incredible comfort to have anybody on your care team, especially these complex care case managers who have this bird's eye view, just saying, I'm here if you need me, didn't really go through the benefits of striving to be a good parent.
Well, I'm thinking about what you said earlier about the when the physician came back about toileting, but wrapped that in, this is how we could help you do that. And it reminds me of something I've been hearing more and more recently from parents is one, so often they're not asked how they're doing, and they wish to be generally, but they also hope that if you open the door and ask, that you're prepared to support the need that comes out of that.
Mhm.
And so it's not exactly your example, but it runs in parallel. That if we introduce the conversation about a need, that we have some way to support whatever it is that's being raised. And so it was interesting to hear that reflected
Mhm.
example. So I think one of the things that we wanted to raise today in this conversation is thinking about this strong desire for a parent to feel like they're being a good parent, but also noting that there are needs that they have, and there could be a tension between their desire to maintain that goal of feeling like they're a good parent to their child, and the articulated or unarticulated needs. And so, the question is for all of us is if we cannot meet the psychosocial needs of a parent, can they feel like the good parent that they wish to be? Um, so perhaps they could, but we think that as we support parents in addressing their needs, that can play a strong role in their ability so they can access what they need to access to, both literally and figuratively, to do the job of caregiving and to feel like they're being a good parent.
Well said, Chrissy. So, I mean, this has been an awesome reflection for me as prepping for this. Why might a need be unarticulated? There are and it really does fall into three distinct buckets. There's communication issues, burnout, which feels more physical to me, and then this emotional overwhelm. Um, Communication issues can come about when there's kind of a disconnect in the power dynamic. You sometimes feel like your clinician's not speaking the same language, where the information hasn't been presented in a way that it's digestible. Or they're experiencing some, unintentional bias. And then this burnout, I mean, I can remember the first year post Alden's diagnosis. It was incredible how my cognition was so affected um, by the diagnosis, by the coping, and it wasn't even the physical work of it. But the first couple of years, I think my working memory was just shot. And the ability to kind of list my own needs and work through, a checklist was significantly depleted. And then, emotional overwhelm. Um, I think when you're on this journey with a medically complex child, when, death feels kind of ever present, guilt, fear, grief, anger, any can present at any given moment. It just feels like a grab bag of like root negative emotions. And this can just make it really challenging to express a need and support a need. Um, Anything to add there, Chrissy?
No, I think, well, yeah, I mean, I think summarizing some of what you said and kind of bolstering the idea that the exterior is not always reflecting the interior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's probably many more reasons that are personal to others that we don't even represent on this slide. But I think part of empathy and something that I strive for when I try to be empathic is remembering that piece and hoping that I recognize that I just can't see it all. And that allows us to be curious about the person in front of us, but also to know that there's always more to the story, even if it's not being heard. I'll also say I want to add prior negative experiences. I don't know if we gave a nod to that, is another reason that parents do not share needs when they've raised an issue. And if they have a similar issue now or not, if they have learned that they may have a reaction that was not helpful or prior trauma in the healthcare system, that is another thing that shuts people down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or that concern has been, poo-pooed by other clinicians, right? I feel like is in almost every diagnosis story I hear from parents. oh, my PCP wasn't worried. You know,
Yes. Yes.
it takes some time for a parent to kind of feel strong as a true expert on their child.
Yeah. I love that.
So this one is my favorite. It's particularly important to CPN. It's actually the first concept that CPN taught me. CPN is, as real, or sorry, anticipatory grief is as real as any grief. It's as much physical as it is mental. And it is that grief that a parent is already experiencing in the present as they anticipate any series of losses for their child or family. I will take you to my first experience with anticipatory grief. It was on the day of Alden's diagnosis. And I had spent a lot of that day kind of crying and working through the emotions, but had kind of calmed down and was rocking him. And then all of a sudden, I had a thought, an anticipatory grief thought. And I just was overcome, let out this huge sob. And my husband turned to me and was like, "What is it?" And I said, "He'll never have children." And it was like, how absurd, one might think, looking at this young mom holding a 4-month-old, grieving the loss of her non-existent children. But I can tell you that grief was extraordinary. And it felt as real as I just lost grandchildren, a hope that I had not realized I had even hoped for. And so I think treating this grief as real, my palliative care social worker at the time connected me with a grief counselor. And, we have this concept, the better the before, the better the after. We are thankfully not in the after as Alden is still with us. But right now, having worked with anticipatory grief and understanding what it is, name it, understand it has a time and place and that it really can steal me from the present moment, I've figured out how to work with that, right? And let it go and be present with my son when I can be. All thanks to just understanding it and working with a professional. So this is incredibly overwhelming, and something that can knock our socks off at any time because it doesn't have to do with the present moment.
Yeah, and I think that would be a recommendation we have for those who are on the call of naming that for parents and helping them understand that there's a label for what they're feeling, as a place to start to do the work through the grief. But because otherwise the feelings are so overwhelming and scary being unnamed, especially if in most cases it's not, you haven't had this type of feeling before. And so the naming it's a really powerful place to help parents as they move along with their grief.
Okay, I see the question in the chat, and I think should we address it now? It feels
If you
so
wish, I haven't seen it. Yeah,
present. So,
go ahead.
She's interested in the parent trajectory when a child is diagnosed, and she's interested in the sibling trajectory when this is introduced into their life. In my experience, in my past work, you try to get them therapy, distract them with activities. Is that the best way to help as a clinician? I'll be curious what your thoughts are, and then I can dive into what we've done.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I actually have, I'd say a moderately strong opinion on this, because I maintain a practice in New York City where I live. Because of my work, I draw in referrals related to illness, and it's either a child with an illness, a parent of a child, a spouse whose spouse has an illness, or children or siblings whose parent, any family member. And that is often a gut reaction. And I do not think that 100% of those people who are affected by illness must be in therapy, and certainly that they need to be in therapy now. I think it is a very individualized thing, and you can speak with a professional consult. So what I do is I have a parent of a child come in and tell me what their concerns are. What are their concerns that are unique to their child? They may know things about their child that make them particularly vulnerable to having trouble coping. But in most cases, kids are adjusted pretty well. And with the right supports, parents can do a lot of the work. So sometimes the outcome is supporting the parent to do the work of parenting the sibling. And sometimes the outcome is we've established a relationship. I'm here. You come back as something has changed. And here are the ways that you'll know if something has changed. Laura, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on what we've experienced. We kind of dove in very quickly with child life and found that it was just kind of play sessions and really wasn't getting at anything underneath. And so we've discharged from that service actually twice and then brought them back in when it's like, okay, the well sibling of Alden, her name's Hadley, she's complaining of stomach aches a lot, and of course taking the stomach ache seriously, and also understanding that it may be, more psychological and indeed was. Yeah, so I think knowing that there are resources there, but maybe not needing them right off the bat. And I have loved the guidance of, let the child lead the conversation. They are going to be very curious about very specific things. Is it catchy? Am I going to get it? That's a child perspective, and did I do it? There's developmental ages, and we were coached that our daughter is still at this age where she's going to worry mostly about herself. And now we're at kind of in a new age or new stage. And I think that's when she got the stomach aches. So
I'm really glad this question was raised too, though, as it ties into the topic of being a good parent, where I started that parents want to be a good parent to all their children, right? So like you have a desire to also make sure Hadley and Alden's brother are tended to, right? And I think that's also where the instinct comes from parents. They're like, I'm going to offer 1,000 things to this ill child. What they're grabbing, what can I offer this one? And so it might be helpful to name that for a parent of putting it on the table. I see you wanting to give everything you can to sibling. Let's think about what your goals are and what the worries are and what are the creative ways you can make sure that they're supported and cared for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have found that some of those conversations of what are your worries and just knowing what resources are there. And that's something that I feel like case management is just an expert at. And just knowing that they're there, right? Not actually engaging them in the present moment, but then the fear is managed and I can be present. All right, I want to fly through this slide and the next one because I want to allow for time for the more robust one. So these are other parental worries. I'm sure you've had time to look at them as we're chatting. I would just say if you get a sense that a parent is having one of these worries, we're naming it, and with support wrapped around it. I think this issue of distrust, especially around a quality of life, is a really interesting one, especially for our super medically complex or severely disabled children. I have a lot of moms who actually go in when they're inpatient and read through the nursing notes and the doctor's notes to really make sure that the documentation reflects the wishes to, do everything. We want to bring this patient home, or we want to bring our son home. So it's a real issue, and I think that having spaces to voice that is really important. All right, let's fly through invisible burdens. These ones feel slightly different in that they really are time sucks to me. Like they steal our time. Especially this last one, just the burden of ongoing every need. And our case manager is here today, listening. And I would just say that being validated in any of these is incredibly valuable in and of itself, but sometimes like really the smallest act to help check something off the list or ensure that it was done well or feel like you have somebody kind of in your corner is extraordinary. Our case manager, she wasn't able to attend our IEP meeting, but we had plenty of support. She checked in, making sure before and after, kind of how'd it go, just through a text message. And I don't even think I wrote her back, but she checked in again the next week, which is just amazing, right? Life is so busy, and I just deeply appreciate her understanding of that. It was the receiving of that. I felt so supported and really empowered. Like, hey, I have the medical system behind me if I need to go back into this. And along those lines, she has helped me um, make sure that the right wording is in place for as insurance issues come up or school issues have come up, to help me get those letters right, and feed that towards the pediatrician so that these issues that really can draw hours and hours and hours of your life out are managed more efficiently the first time.
Mm. So I want to make sure we get some time to point out some of CPN's resources. So these last few sites will be a little fast, but I know that they're available to all of you. This is kind of the tail end of that body of research. So what can clinicians do to foster good parent beliefs? And so you can see that there are 3 broad domains here, which I think some of which we've touched upon today. So acknowledging parents' role in caring for their child. These are things like making sure the parent is included as a team member, trusting their judgment and their knowing of the child, speaking openly and honestly and without veiled language to them as well. Kind and caring communications, of course, and truly seeing the child as a whole person. So you can help parents center the good. This is a bit repetitive, but again, recognizing them as the expert in their child, celebrating those inch stones versus those highly esteemed milestones is very, very nice and useful. Help the parents see the positive outcomes of their caregiving. You can say, "You're doing a good job. I noticed that this was this way and now it's this way, and like kudos to you for figuring out how to get that done." I'm still surprised at how often parents are not told like they're doing good at this caregiving thing. Focusing on their hopes, all parents wish for that, whatever that might mean to them, and supporting them to live in a meaningful present, which is something that Laura mentioned earlier, while they're anticipating a difficult future.
I can so clearly remember the times where clinicians have told me I'm doing a good job.
Oh. Mm.
It is amazing. I mean, it is like you just want to like print it out and frame it. It's a touchstone when you are not able to find grace.
Oh, I love that. We all want to be told we're an A+ student, right? Like we all need that forever. That's great. This is a really beautiful quote that some of us at CPN love. It's from a book called Shared Struggles. We are actually doing a screening of the documentary Shared Struggles that was inspired by the book in a few weeks that we hope you'll join us for. But I think the quote alone is just so, so beautiful. And they say, "Even as the doctor did not believe in the child's recovery as the parents did, she believed in the parents." And that is such a special role that we can play as providers in supporting parents and believing in them, even if they can't believe in themselves in doing this work and all the love they have for their child. And finally, here's an example of that evolution in definition of being a good parent. This mom, Deborah, says, "It was during this meeting that someone asked me for the first time ever, 'How do you think Cassie feels about being here and all the interventions that she is experiencing?'" And Deborah said that with this one exact statement, I began to question what being a good parent was truly about. I answered, "I think she absolutely hates being here and all the invasiveness she is experiencing." It was then that I heard that it was okay to say no and that it would be coming from a loving place. With that, we'd love to just take a few minutes to show you some of the resources at Courageous Parents Network that can support you in doing this work. I think we welcome questions in the chat as we continue. It's a fairly small group. I think we can manage both sharing some resources and addressing your questions at the same time. So I'll transition to the website briefly here. So here we go. If you haven't come to our website at courageousparentsnetwork.org, give you a really brief overview, and both Laura and I are available anytime after this to do a deeper dive with any of you if you're interested in that. We have developed many, many resources that are co-developed by parents and clinicians, and really are for both parents and clinicians who are caring for children with medical complexity. We would love for you to sign up to receive our newsletters. We try not to bombard your email address, but when you do, please indicate that you're a clinician so that you can get access to this clinician and educator portal, which has resources that are developed for clinicians to support you in your work in supporting families. So for example, there are materials on to further educate yourself, to educate colleagues, to educate any learners that you have rotating with you. We have resources on pediatric palliative care in here with regard mostly to introducing pediatric palliative care to families and explaining that to other providers. And also some recommendations for how you might use our resources with the families in your care. I will show you the media library briefly so that you have an idea of when I say the word resource, what I mean by that. Our resources are different forms of media, and we have three primary media types. The first would be our video interviews. This is really how CPN began. Our founder and executive director, Blythe Lord, had a background, does have a background in television production and distance learning. And so she really started CPN by interviewing parents who have been there with children who have all kinds of conditions on all of the psychosocial aspects that come up for them in their role as a caregiver and parent. Over time, that evolved so that we now have many more interviews with other family members like siblings and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and also many clinicians. These are hour-long videos that have been segmented. So all the tiles you see here are videos that range from like 2 minutes to maybe 8 minutes long, which frankly is helpful because none of us have attention span these days, and also parents don't have time to just sit necessarily and dive into a full interview. So they're segmented to really touch on a particular theme or topic that was covered in that moment. If you see the drop down here, you'll see all of the topics for which we have resources for, and so that's a great way to find what you're looking for. And the library search function also works quite well. So you can enter a keyword like hope or end of life or fear or grandparents, whatever it might be, and pull up some resources that way. In addition to the videos, we have a very robust blog, which Laura is managing now. And actually with that shift, that means we're publishing blogs at an even faster rate. It's been really exciting for us. It's one of the most trafficked portions of our website. A lot of families get channeled to us through social media to read the blogs, and for good reason. They are beautifully written, raw anecdotes as it relates to everything that you could think of in the caregiving journey.
And they're also all tagged by themes so that if you want to be able to send a parent written, so you can see the tags right at the top there.
Yeah, that's such a good feature. So you could go see more as it relates to that tag. And then finally, the other primary resource that we have would be our guides. These are really fantastic. You can think of them as handouts. They are printable PDFs. They are co-developed by clinicians or researchers with expertise on that topic, and then parents who illuminate the topic with lived experience. Again, on another number of topics. One of my favorites, which I will show you briefly, is our shared decision-making guide. Our guides are almost all available in Spanish and some in Portuguese with other languages to come. But you can see here, this formatting is how they all look with learning objectives at the top. So we introduce to the parent or caregiver who's reading this what it is we hope that they get out of this guide and what we're aiming for them to learn. We introduce the topic. Everything that is written by CPN uses a very palliative aware tone. And so I think you'll see that in the gentle but directness that we strive for balance in terms of our language, and also very kind of validating wraparound, attending to the emotional piece while we are speaking to some of the technical aspects. So this guide, for example, teaches parents about what this thing called shared decision making even is. It prompts them to think about who they are as decision makers, which is something we could all probably be reflecting on and don't do enough of. And then we teach them how providers typically communicate information. And then we give them literal language they can use when there's a tension between their style and the clinician's style. And this giving of language is something that we feel like CPN does a lot of because it serves two purposes. One, parents will benefit from having a language to describe their own experiences to others. And of course, having a shared language with clinicians is critically important in helping them feel more empowered and equipped to do the things that they really want to do, like being a good parent and a strong advocate for their child and an informed decision maker. So you can send parents to the media library, but it's a bit of a big, deep ocean. So what you might do is consider suggesting they enter through one of our what we call journey maps. This idea of a journey map was launched about 2.5 years ago with our tool NeuroJourney. This is specific to families of children with severe neurologic impairment, so those neurologically based conditions that are almost always degenerative in nature. This is really an anticipatory guidance tool to help parents learn what's happening in their child's body and to think about how they might make decisions for their child over time. It is based on the concept of an arc of a life, which actually came from our founder's husband. Their daughter had infantile Tay-Sachs disease and lived for about 2 years. And this notion, when they received her diagnosis, came from him, Charlie. He said that she may have a shorter life than they would wish for her, but it will have a full and meaningful arc, really meaning that story arc, so that all lives have a beginning and an end. And this is something that we really believe at CPN, that they can have a full and robust middle, especially with the right supports. And so NeuroJourney was really mapped out with that kind of beautiful notion in mind. This could be a presentation in itself, so I'm happy to meet with any of you who want to learn more about NeuroJourney in the future. But the idea is that it's based on 4 phases of life. There are many medical topics for a user to do a deep dive in. They get a lot of repeated teaching on how that body system relates to the problem of the brain or central nervous system that's kind of driving it all. And then they get a lot of anticipatory guidance about what they might expect over the course of their child's life, which is followed by a very palliative aware voice that tends to the emotional piece as it relates to that particular topic. And so then in addition to the medical map, there is the psychosocial map, which covers all of our psychosocial topics. And then very briefly, we have 2 other maps. Coping with Loss contains all of our bereavement resources, and Navigating Medical Complexity is for all comers. This has 3 phases. You'll see here that we have really packaged resources in these different topic areas. A really popular topic for CPN is decision making. So our resources on decision making about tracheostomy are highly used by palliative care teams in particular, and also families. But this is just another way to introduce our topics to families. We have a lot on siblings and other things that came up during today's conversation. I'm aware of the time, so I'll just note, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. We do have referral cards that we will send out to you for free. You can just send me an email with your mailing address. They're available in English and Spanish. One card covers Navigating Medical Complexity and NeuroJourney, and the second card we have available is Coping with Loss. Coping with Loss is available in English and Spanish, and NeuroJourney in multiple languages. Laura, do you want to add anything? And if anyone has a final question.
I'm always looking for blogs. If any, we'd love a case management perspective. If you'd like to meet with me one-on-one, I'll toss my email in here as well. But I'd love to help you put together a story that would support others. Thank you, Chrissy. In your field and understand what case management does. And I love seeing that written like words to use in this sentence or in that situation at the bottom of that guide. I hadn't fully appreciated how CPN does that and how empowering it is, in this world of kind of rare and super medically complex kids. Often you feel so alone, and just to be like, oh my gosh, they're literally putting words in my mouth, and I feel like they work is really empowering.
Especially at the beginning too, like when you haven't
Oh, yeah.
adopted the skill yet. We do have this beautiful guide that relates to today's conversation that we made for parents about this good parent concept to introduce it to them, and they can hear from the perspectives of other parents and how they have thought of being a good parent. So that's a great handout to share as well. We are happy to give presentations to any of your teams, and always, always, always available to support you in your work. And thank you so much for what you do.